What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Roman's Creative Academy. As always, I'm Jay.
And I'm Mike.
And Roman is our pup, of course. But today we're going to be talking about how to structure a good creative financing deal. I think this is something that we all struggle with at one point or another, so we're here to tell you what to do.
Yep, absolutely. We see creative deals every day posted all over Facebook, all over the internet. And yes, it is a seller finance deal. It is a creative deal that people are locking up. But I think what people lack the most right now is understanding what makes it a viable, good deal, right? Just like with a cash deal, there's a certain formula, a certain equation. It's the same exact thing with a creative deal.
But before we get into knowing how to structure a good creative deal, we kind of need to know a little bit of background, right? So, first and foremost, what we teach our students are pretty much the four levers, of creative financing, but there's also some additional ones that people don't really think about.
And or even know, right? So, Jay, I guess you want to hit on the four main ones, and then I could touch on the two additional.
Yeah, so the four main, and I just want to back up. People have this misconception that there's only three things that you can really negotiate, and that's price, the term length, and the interest rate. Because as investors, that's the way our mind thinks. But in reality, the four main ones that we can negotiate are price, term length, the interest rate, and the down payment, right? So, of course, every scenario is different, which is why some of these you can do and you can't do in some scenarios. But I'll let Mike tell you, what the additional ones are and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So, outside of those four, right, those are the four main ones, and they're always give and take when you're negotiating. So, if a seller needs their price, maybe you need to do a longer term length and a lower down payment. Or maybe they're willing to give you a great price and you can give them a little bit more of a down payment and a shorter term length, right? It's all give and take. But there's two other ones that are actually really, really important and they're overlooked. So the first one is the first payment date. So most people don't know that you can negotiate this, but a lot of times, just think about it. A house needs work. You're going to be taking over a seller's mortgage payments on their behalf, or you're going to start making them monthly payments. Well, the cool part about it is you can negotiate that with the seller and say, hey, well, while I'm going to be fixing this up, right, it's going to take me at least 3 months to get it ready. I will start making you payments 90 days after we close. And that'll give me time to fix it up. And I'll give you the little bit of money down we agreed upon up front, or maybe there's no money down, right? But I'll begin making you those payments in 90 days. Now, the other one is monthly payment. Monthly payment is the one where it's variable. Sometimes you can negotiate it, and sometimes you can't. What do I mean by that? Well, if it is a wrap deal, right, a mirror wrap or a wraparound mortgage, that payment is really gauged on whatever the mortgage, the underlying debt on the home is. It's not about what you can negotiate, right? So in those situations, you can't touch it. But with a seller or seller finance deal, that is the main one that I always try and negotiate.
And I do want to say that with a first payment date, that one can also be variable depending on the scenario, because
the situation.
Yeah, if the person can't pay, say it's a sub 2 or a mirror app, and the person can't make their payments, then you can't really negotiate that, right? Once you close, you have to start making payments. But if it's seller financing and the person, doesn't need the money right away and maybe the house needs rehab, you can negotiate that with them and say, hey, to get this property, up and running, cash flowing, I need 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is that you may need to be able to accomplish that.
Yep, exactly. And that's just the main six. So there's six of them, right? So there's four main ones that always go in a creative deal. And depending on the situation, the other two come into play, right? Now, one thing I want you guys to think about is those are the plug and play parts. Those are the moving parts. But just because you have really good terms, and this has happened to us, right? We've had a deal where it was terms like you'd die for, but the practicality of the deal just wasn't there. It was in a shitty location, and the property basically should have just been bulldozed. So, of course, on paper, it looks like an amazing deal. This is for creative deal. Location matters, and condition matters tremendously. So, Jay, typically if we have a bad location, a really torn, rundown house, what do we call those?
We call those scratch leads, right? There's nothing really you can do with them.
Yep. So a scratch lead is a lead that we, in our system, or even you guys, if you don't have a system, right? You're looking at that lead and you're saying, even if I got it cheaper, I couldn't do anything with it. Those we abandon, we call them scratch leads. We can't do anything with that house, and we can't help that seller, unfortunately.
Like, for example, we get a house in a very rural location that we need to get for pennies. We've literally had someone tell us, take the house, I'll pay the taxes, just take it off my hands. But because it wasn't worth much and it was completely run down or complete tear down, it wasn't worth it.
Yep. And it stinks in that situation, but you can't make other people's problems yours. So when you're negotiating with a seller, you need to help the seller, but it's give and take. And that's the name of the game with creative finance. With a cash deal, it's can you take my offer or can you not? And this is why I need to give you this offer. But with creative financing, it's, well, I know you need this. So since you need this, I can do this. Or since you need this, I'm going to ask for this, right? It's all give and take. And it's really, the cool part about it is like, you guys can really work together with the seller and find that common ground where everybody walks away happy.
Now, so many times we get asked, okay, so now we know the 4 main pillars and the 2 additional, but what would you consider if I'm looking at a deal? How do I know it's a good creative deal? So we're going to give you the parameters to look for when it comes to creative deal hunting, right?
These are literally the parameters our team uses to pump out good deals and to buy good deals for ourselves, right? And there's certain parameters that we give for those deals that go out to the public, and then we have very strict parameters for ourselves. I'm going to give you guys the main parameters that we use with our team and that we teach our students, right? So for the first one, this is the most basic, but typically with a creative deal, your goal is to get a property, right, that you can get with terms better than you could using your own credit at a bank today, right? So with that being said, we typically look for deals with a 10% down payment or less all in. If it's over 10% down, typically it's too high. Granted, there are exceptions, but that is the basic parameter. Yeah. Now, Jay, in terms of term length, what do we typically look for, and like what do we tell our students too? This is based on personal experience too.
Oof. I've seen this time and time again where 5-year term length is good enough for people. And I cannot stress enough from experience that this is not long enough, right? You need to have 5 years or more. If you get 5 years or less, too short.
And again, it depends on your exit. If you plan to hold the property and turn it into a lease option, sell it on a wrap, keep it as a long-term rental, 5 years, in our opinion, based on our experience from a deal we did and bought, is too short. If you are buying the property deeply discounted as well on as buying it with creative financing, and your plan is to resell it, that is okay. You already have a plan that you know I'm not going to keep this. But if you are planning on keeping the deal and in adding it to your portfolio, 5 years typically is not enough. If you are going to sell it on a rent to own, right? If there's one wrong move with the tenant buyer, you're starting from scratch with a new one and potentially ruining your ability to get cash out that seller.
I think the best way to put it is a 5-year term generalized with any scenario is not long enough.
Yep.
Because if, like Mike said, if you are getting it deeply discounted on terms and you're able to refi out and the numbers still make sense in terms of monthly cash flow, then that's a different story. But if you, like Mike said, are thinking to rent to own it and you get a 5-year term and your tenant buyer does something or decides not to buy it and now you have to start all over again, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to find someone else who's willing to or able to buy it in that short time frame that you have or in that time frame in general.
I would say the best rule of thumb for you guys is the shorter the term, the lower the price. The longer the term, the more you can pay. So you're not going to pay top dollar or over market value with a short term. You screw yourself. If you can get it discounted and discounted enough where you got a nice amount of equity in the property, a shorter term is okay. Still, 5 years is our cutoff where we say 5 years or less is too short, unless you are planning on flipping it and turning it around ASAP.
So basically what Mike is saying is analyze the deal from acquiring it, but also analyze it when you're going to sell it in the future, right? Obviously, things can happen in the market that you don't foresee, but you can use statistics to figure out, okay, and the numbers to figure out, okay, I can do this. I'm still going to be in the green or I'm still safe if I do this in those 5 years.
Yep. Then we talk about interest rate. So when we're doing straight seller financing where the seller's holding the note for us, we typically will structure it where it's 0% interest. Sometimes sellers, the more savvy they get, all of those things, commercial, typically those you're going to maybe get an interest rate on, but our goal is to get it low. The rule of thumb is that what we have noticed that specifically with mirror wrap deals where you're taking over the seller's mortgage on their behalf, if it has a 5% interest rate or more, kills your exit strategies. A lot of times they do not cash flow, right? If the interest rate is high and it doesn't cash flow as a long-term rental, well, now long-term rental and potentially rent to own are off the table. If your interest rate is higher, it also potentially takes the ability for you to sell it on a wraparound to another buyer, right? Because typically you're going to make your interest percentage points, and that's how you're going to get paid, right? And then on top of that, if you're going to assign the deal, it's also less favorable because you want to have a lower interest rate. That's the whole point of doing this, so you can get terms better than you can at a bank.
And I think this really leads, quite frankly, into the last one where I think a lot of people drop the ball, personally, and that's cash on cash return. Your cash on cash return still has to be good. So, Mike, what's the percentage that we typically look for?
Absolutely. So if we're going to keep a deal, that's different than what the general public looks for. But typically, if you're going to be doing creative financing, you want to see long-term rent. That's how we always analyze our deals, right? You never want to buy based on midterm and short-term numbers. If it doesn't cash flow as a long-term, get it off the table, right? Unless you can flip it. We typically look for 25% cash-on-cash return or higher, and that is another another thing that constitutes a good creative deal, right? Now, this is going to be like a little bonus. For me and Jay, we don't have cash-on-cash returns for any of our deals. They're all infinite, meaning that we have no money in any of our deals. And that's because of how we buy and what we do with the deals that we keep. So most of our deals, like I said, actually all of them, we have no money in them. And that's why we don't keep as much, because when we do keep a deal, it's a great deal. We don't want to just keep mediocre ones, because when we have kept them in the past, this is still the bonus, we have actually lost money, right? So we stopped buying deals that were just okay, where it would potentially only spit out cash flow, right? And we didn't take a look at all the other terms or the potential risks and liabilities of that property. So, guys,
Very well said.
with that being said, guys, I want you to go back. If you made it this far, good for you. I applaud you, and if so, reach out to me. I'd love to talk with you. But with that being said, guys, remember to go back, watch this video again, and really take notes on what truly makes a good creative deal. If you guys structure a good creative deal, I want you to reach out to me and Jay, because we'll buy it off you. Okay? Straight up. I'll pay you an assignment fee. That's no problem. Or we'll help you structure it too. So just reach out. Now, guys, if you like this video, if you found that this video was helpful for you to take actionable steps, I need you to like it. I need you to comment on it. And I also need you guys to subscribe. With that being said, we'll see you guys on our next episode.
Thank you for supporting, and we'll see you next week. See ya.